Do these big guys get you excited? I'll tell you what, they sure get me worked up. Come September and the approach of bow season and the bugling season for elk, I get just about as worked up as a big old bull rubbing his antlers on a tree. Hello folks, my name is Ted Steinke and I'm responsible for bugling in this bull and quite a few more. September is my favorite month to be in the mountains. The weather is generally fair with warm days and cool nights. The air is crisp and clear. Aspen trees are turning from green to golden yellow as the shortening daylight hours and the first frosts trigger chemical changes in the vegetation. The mountain scenery is simply spectacular, with the awesome beauty of the white snow-capped mountains, crystal clear mountain lakes and streams, and the spectacular gold of the aspens. Fall is upon us in the high country. It's a great time to be alive. If you're an elk hunter like I am, September has special meaning to you. September is the month when bow season is open for elk in many western states. September is the month when bulls go into rut and perform their annual bugling and mating ritual. The great bugles they give forth from within their chests allows the hunter to locate them by sound from quite a distance away. The mating urge causes the bulls to lose some of their natural caution. Now remember, I said some of it, not all of it. Elk are never pushovers. In fact, hunting statistics show that the bow hunter success ratio varies from 5% to about 12% depending upon the state. Looking at this in reverse, that means that 88 to 95% of bow hunters go home without an elk. Bugling for elk is a very specialized technique that works only a couple weeks out of the year. It's also the most fascinating and productive way to hunt elk with the bow and arrow. Now, going home without an elk doesn't mean that the bow hunter is unsuccessful. It means they did not bag an elk for one reason or another. Hunters who take out primitive weapons like the bow and arrow measure their success in different terms. For some, it's calling in a bull and then letting him go because he wasn't big enough. For others, it might mean having the excitement of calling in a bull, whether or not you get the shot. For others, it's just knowing that you gave it your best shot. You pitted yourself, your mind and your body, against an elusive and intelligent quarry, against the mountains, and against the elements. For others, it's just being able to enjoy the hunt, the thrill of the chase, the beauty of the mountains, the forests, the lakes, and the streams, or sharing a unique and adventurous experience with close friends. Or maybe it's just camping out in the wild, being independent, getting away from the cities, the traffic, the pollution, the crime, and the fast pace of modern society. For me, it's a combination of these. I love the mountains, and I love elk hunting. Most of the elk habitat is tough, rugged, mountainous country. It's difficult to get around in, whether you're on foot or horseback, and the elk may be difficult to locate. That's why being able to locate his quarry by sound is one of the biggest advantages a hunter can have. And hunters who hunt with primitive weapons like the bow and arrow need all the advantages they can get, because a bow hunter has to work his way in close. And by close, I mean close. I'm not talking about flinging arrows at 50, 60, or 80 yards. That long-range shooting will only get the bow hunter into trouble by wounding animals with poor shot placement and poor penetration. By close, I mean close. Inside of 35 yards, 15 or 20 yards if possible. The bugling of the bulls not only allows the bow hunter to locate the elk, but allows him to call them in close. Big bulls can be called in close by a skillful bow hunter who understands their habits and knows how to bugle. I'd like to show you some of my hunting and bugling techniques and show you how my friends and I go about hunting the magnificent elk. I started my fall hunt by guiding and photographing on a pack-in hunt with Mark Condict of Emerald Creek Outfitters, Saratoga, Wyoming. Mark is best known for his bighorn sheep hunts, but Mark also offers September bow hunts and October rifle hunts for trophy bulls in one of Wyoming's finer wilderness areas. A lot of hunters think that a fully guided hunt is expensive, and it is, but an outfitter with good guides can save you a lot of time and trouble by packing you into a good area which has the game and which isn't overrun with other hunters. You're paying for the use of his horses and equipment, for food and lodging, and probably most important of all, his experience. His knowledge of the country, of where the game is, and how to hunt them. Plus, you can learn an awful lot if you keep an open mind and are willing to learn. You know, there's a million and one things to do to get ready for a pack-in hunt. Let's look at just a few of them. The guides, wranglers, and cooks packed about 20 miles back into our primitive camp. We did this several days before the hunters arrived. This gave the guides a chance to become reacquainted with the lay of the land and to scout out where the elk were. The best way to do this in territory with open parks is to get up high where you have a good view and then use binoculars and spotting scopes to examine the territory on the sides of mountains. In backcountry areas where the elk are not disturbed by man, they graze in open meadows in the morning and evening, and they linger in these openings for longer periods of time than they would in country where they keep running into man. We spotted quite a few elk by using this method, and at the same time, we didn't smell up the area with human scent. One of the bonuses of using this method is the beautiful views of the mountain scenery. This is September 10th, and it has already snowed on the higher peaks. In fact, this morning it was snowing up high and drizzling down below. JJ, who is one of the other guides, and I got up early this morning to glass for elk. As we climbed the mountain, we saw a small herd of elk about 200 yards away from camp. One was a small bull. We're glassing all of the slopes that we can see, but the elk that we spotted were primarily on the slopes which face towards the north and east. This goes along with the theory that at this time of the year, elk have grown their winter coats and are uncomfortably warm during sunny September days. They like the cooler, moister, shadier slopes which are located on the north and east sides, away from the hot sun of the midday. If you pay attention, you'll notice a distinct difference in the type of vegetation and the amount of moisture you'll find on slopes facing towards the sun versus those away from the sun. This is because the hot summer sun tends to dry up south-facing slopes, whereas those away from the sun are shadier and moister. For elk hunting, I recommend a good quality pair of binoculars. I like the 7x35s or 8x40s. This size is adequate for the initial spotting of elk, and yet they aren't too heavy or bulky to carry around. If your binoculars are so heavy that you leave them back at camp, they won't do you any good at all. Spotting scopes should have a lower magnification of 12 or 15 power, and you may wish to go higher in order to judge the size of antlers. Not that a bow hunter can be overly picky, but it's always nice to get a good view of your quarry and to drool over a real nice trophy.
Sheep are out. Whole herd of them. Way up high. Right up underneath the bottom. Underneath the top.
There's a herd way up.
Oh.
They're elk, huh?
Cow. Cow.
It looks like a herd bull with a group of cows. They're way up above timberline, and it's almost 9 o'clock in the morning. You can tell that these guys haven't been hunted much.
Here's the bull about a 5-point. You see his head. Bugling. He might make 6.
He's so far away you can't hear him bugle. God damn, that hillside's just infested with elk. Well, we're gonna have to do something about that. There's too many elk over there. They're gonna eat all that grass up. We're gonna have to save it.
Oh, I see another one.
See another one?
Yep. This is a little bit closer.
Good.
Bull.
All right, bull. Where's he at now?
Little bitty park. That building rock. To the right where the bulls were last night.
Yeah.
Okay, he's right there.
Oh, yeah, there he is. That one old cow tried to leave. He went up.
Yeah, they
Herded her back in. Looks to me like he's trying to keep him up here for himself. Doesn't want him to get down in the timber where anybody else can get to him. In areas that are heavily hunted, you'll rarely see elk like this in open areas this long after sunup. That's one reason why I like to pack in and get away from the other hunters. The animals aren't spooked from their regular routines. We spotted this cow bedded in a meadow at about 9:30 in the morning. She's laying on an east-facing slope. The glassing we did this morning and the previous couple of days really paid off for us. We saw quite a few elk, including about a dozen bulls. We now had a good idea of where to take the hunters on the next day's hunt. From all the elk that we'd seen, it looked like we were going to have some good hunting, but hunting with a bow and arrow was never easy. We headed back to camp, where Susie had a hearty breakfast prepared for us. We filled up on bacon and eggs, toast, and pancakes. Just when I was getting ready to sit back and relax, JJ started splitting firewood. It seems like a guide never has a chance to relax for even 1 minute. It's a hard life. Now you can tell that JJ has done this once or twice before. Jim rode out last night to pick up the hunters and bring them back into camp.
Damn, boy. All right, keep your horse and saddle then. We'll get your bows off.
Well, we're going to foot.
Yeah, because they're right up here, Jim.
Get your bows off us, man. You guys head out and I'll unpack everything else.
It's going to be a little different than 600 yarders, ain't it?
Come on, girl.
Seen a black bear yesterday.
Good. I bet that made Susie happy.
It was up Sheep Creek.
We tried to lead it down here for her, but goddamn, wouldn't follow. We left a bunch of scraps, so it should be done in about 2 days, I
Oh,
think.
good. Have some camp meat here,
I'll be gone in 2 days.
huh? Okay. That one's free. I guess this one is too.
Well, now you're roughing it. I'm going to haul a sucker right down into the tent. When you get these.
There's my bag.
Yeah. I got a good all-day hunt planned for tomorrow.
Yeah, we got a good one planned. We got some bulls all lined
We've
up.
probably seen 12 different bulls.
What is this all-day hunt for morning? You'll fill them tonight, aren't you?
Nah, I wouldn't count on it tonight. I wouldn't count on it tonight.
Come on, I need some bar time.
Yeah,
Oh, far.
it'll take us a couple of days, maybe.
We might get one tonight. He's bugling up here this morning.
Good. Hey, I'm all for it.
We've seen a big old 6 bugle this morning.
Good. Well, Mark's sheep hunting right now. There ain't no reason why we can't get a bow license filled.
That evening, we did get a bull to answer my bugles, but the problem was, we were on one side of the creek, and he was on the other. He came part way into my calls, and we worked down slope to try to cross the creek. But when we got there, we found about a 30-foot drop-off and no way to get across. We simply ran out of room and daylight. The next morning, we left camp over an hour before daylight and hiked into the area where we had spotted most of the other bulls. We soon spotted a herd of elk leaving the meadow and entering the timber. Now it looks like a straight shot across there, but we ran into a steep ravine which took us about a half hour to cross. We had to circle around to make sure that they didn't see us, hear us, or smell us. Once we got on the other side, I had Kenny set up by a tree and I gave some bugles. The bull responded, but I could tell that he was quite a ways away, and it didn't sound like he was coming any closer. But now that I know his location, we can move in closer. This is the tactic I use on most of the bulls that I call in. Locate them by sound, make sure the wind is right, and then move in several steps. I do this in several increments so that the bull doesn't catch me flat-footed if he comes in silently, and so that I don't overrun his position. Bulls that are in gullies, behind hills, or facing the opposite way are often a lot closer than they sound. So use caution when moving in close. Now we're moving up closer and we'll set up again. We'll try to make him bugle. If he's too far away or doesn't come in, we'll move in closer and set up again. The reason I have Kenny carrying his backpack is because it's made out of nylon. Nylon is noisy when it rubs against trees or branches. I've had several excellent opportunities ruined by hunters wearing nylon packs or noisy clothes. I recommend good, soft, and quiet packs made out of soft fleece material such as the ones made by Kathy Kelly Designs of Portland, Oregon. When you're investing this much time, money, and hard work into a hunt, it makes a lot of sense to wear a soft, quiet pack rather than a noisy nylon one. What I'm trying to do here is to sound like an elk rubbing his antlers on a tree. I'm trying to get the other bull worked up. After exchanging bugles several times and getting answers, it sounded like he had moved closer, but he still wasn't hot enough to come on in. So again, we made sure the wind was right, and we made sure that he couldn't see us, and we moved in closer yet. On the way in, he bugled and allowed us to pinpoint his position. We would have to go down this draw and then up the steep slope on the other side. This is where your preseason conditioning really pays off. Man, these hills are murder.
Just might get him. Let's get in the trees in case he comes in his armor.
That last bugle sounded like it was just over the hill, so we had to scramble for a place to set up. Here's what Kenny had been dreaming about all summer long. Unfortunately, this bugling sequence didn't end up like this. I thought for sure the bull would be coming in all the way. Suddenly, he stopped bugling. The wind had shifted, and he had gotten our scent. These mountain winds are really tricky, and there isn't much that you can do about it when they swirl. But this sequence should give you a good idea of how I move in on the bulls, close the gap, and then set up and bugle. I've had a lot of situations like this where I've called the bulls right on in. In fact, that very same evening, I used these same tactics to bugle in a nice 6-point bull for Kenny. It was late in the evening, and it looks pretty dark with a video camera, but I assure you, there was still plenty of legal shooting time. As before, we set up and I bugled to get the bull to answer and to try to coax him in. The bull was moving in closer, so I had Kenny set up ahead of me. I gave a few short calls to simulate a bull with cows. Now I've zoomed the camera backwards to show you where Kenny is set up ahead of me. Let's zoom back in on the bull. Kenny's drawing now. He's aiming, and there he shoots. Notice that the bull never moved until the arrow hit. Unfortunately, Kenny shot just a hair low, and he missed him. I guarantee you, Kenny was pretty disappointed when he found his arrow with no blood on it. But at the same time, he was quite thrilled because he had had this exciting, heart-thumping experience that he had daydreamed about ever since he sent in his elk application several months ago. If he had been a little bit more accurate in judging the distance, he would have had himself a real nice bull. But that's bow hunting, and that's what makes it such a challenge. Kenny didn't let the disappointment get him down though. The next day, he was back at it with JJ, and JJ bugled in another 6-point bull for him. This time he overestimated the distance and shot over it. That's the problem a lot of bow hunters have. They have a hard time estimating distance. If you're off by only 3 or 4 yards, you can miss a deer at 30 yards. An elk is a lot bigger and gives you more leeway, but not that much more. Too many bow hunters fail to practice under realistic hunting conditions. Don't just shoot at targets at known distances on an archery range. You can increase your skill at judging distances by practicing with a judo point in the type of terrain you'll be hunting. A couple of weeks before the bow season starts, I do almost all of my shooting at unknown distances. I like to roam through the woods in different lighting conditions and shoot at stumps, clumps of dirt, leaves, or whatever offers me a safe target. I do most of my shooting from a kneeling position because chances are I'll be on my knees when I call in my bull. I expect to lose or break several arrows, but it's a small price to pay when measured against your improvement when shooting under actual hunting conditions. After all, you've probably devoted a lot of time, money, and effort into your hunting vacation. The success of your hunt can hinge on your actions, on your decisions, and on your shooting skill during the final seconds when the elk finally approaches. A lot of beginners really don't know what to expect when a bull comes in close. They've read so many successful bow hunting stories in the archery magazines that some think bow hunting elk is a piece of cake. It's easy to forget that magazine editors don't accept too many stories from unsuccessful hunters. I've had hunters that I've guided say, "Just get me within 40 or 50 yards of an elk and I'll have him." Well, there's plenty of things that can go wrong, and judging the distance wrong is just one of them. Now remember, the success rate for bow hunting elk is only 5% to 12%, depending upon the state. You may get only 1 or 2 good opportunities on a 10-day hunt, and if you're new at it, you may not get any chances at all. Now at its best, bugling in a bull can look just like this. But let me tell you, you may have to hunt for quite a few days before you get a perfect situation like this. Now I've had actual hunting situations almost exactly like this, where either I shot the bull or one of my friends that I was guiding took the shot. Now to the uninitiated, this might look like a perfect setup. But right offhand, I can think of over a half-dozen situations where I called bulls in this close and even closer, and the hunter did something wrong to spook off the bull. Most times, they didn't even have a chance to get off a shot. Now when I'm setting up, I like to scrape away the branches and pine needles so that if I have to turn, they won't rustle and scare the bull. I've had some hunters set up straight on with the bull. They were set up so that they could shoot straight out in front of them or to the left, but the bull came in to their right. If you expect him to come this way, have your body angled in this manner so that you can always pivot. You can swing this far and you can swing this far. Now if he happens to come to your right, you're going to have to do some movement. But if you set up right, you clear off the underbrush so there's nothing to make noise, you shouldn't spook him when he moves. Just wait until his head is behind a tree. It's a lot more difficult to get off a shot from ground level than it is from a tree stand. That's because the animal has a better chance of detecting your movement when you draw your bow to aim and shoot. If an elk is looking in your direction, don't move a muscle. Here's a good example of what happened when I tried to move my camera and tripod to get a better view of the bull. Drawing a bow would have made more movement yet. The bull spooked. When a bull comes in, it is usually looking for the source of the calls, so you've got to be careful so that they don't detect your movement when you position yourself for the shot and when you draw your bow for the shot. Don't shoot when he's head on or quartering towards you. Those are poor percentage shots. You've got to wait until he's broadside and his head is turned away from you. Now this can lead to a lot of exciting and anxious moments, and I've seen some hunters go right to pieces and miss bulls inside of 20 yards. Now one way to make your shot easier is to have that diaphragm call in your mouth and to give a call to stop him. But when you do this, have your bow drawn back and be ready for the shot. Now this is the end of my advice here. Let's get back to our bow hunt in Wyoming and see what Nelson's been up to.
Did you see that 5x5 bull that I just saw?
No, I saw the cow out there, and I told her to sneak up here on this meadow, and we stayed just behind you. And the way the hill is curved, we couldn't see him, but we could see you sneaking up. We knew you had something good.
Did you see me give you the signals that there was a bull up there?
Yeah, you bet.
You know, when you bugled, he kind of stopped, but he would kind of walk away, just like there's something that's causing him not to bugle this morning. There's something, either the weather or the conditions or the clear sky or something. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's probably the clear weather. It's hard to say. You know, it's like turkey hunting. Some days they gobble like crazy, and other days they don't do a thing.
Yeah. Would you, what do you suggest we do for this afternoon?
Well, the thermals are starting to rise. This morning we came in and the wind was blowing downhill. So we came up and were able to get in on these elk. We saw some more elk out that way. And they're starting to go up now, so we're going to get up high above them.
When you say a thermal, that's the I guess, heat conditions that are bringing the...
Right.
And so we want to keep our scent on top of the hill.
Yeah.
Actually on top of a mountain, right?
We're on top of a big mountain.
Why don't you give me a demonstration of that elk call again there?
All right,
I'm really impressed with that. That's just absolutely fantastic. Now, what would you say? That's the mating call when the bulls are trying to gather their herds and fight?
Well, they use it for a few different things. One is to challenge another bull. The second one, it seems to attract cows at times. Third one, it seems to, sometimes it scares away the lesser bulls. But, it's just their means of communication. It can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah. I noticed as we was kind of walking along, every now and then you'd give another call. And I've heard elk in herds, and I've heard them, and I've heard the bugling, and I've heard the calf call, and the cows talk, you know, their language. I've seen you doing that. Give me a demonstration, then tell me why you do that.
Okay.
Well, that's real good, Ted. Now, why is that to camouflage our noise?
Yeah, you bet. Whenever you're walking, you just can't help but break twigs and do a little bit of clomping with your feet and kicking rocks every now and then. And if you make some cow and calf noises, it sounds like a herd of elk going through there, which is what we probably sound like, a herd of elk going through there.
Yeah.
And, it kind of relaxes them. Last night we were walking off the mountain, and we came by a cow that was out in the meadow. She was full alert, and her ears were right forward, just steering right in our direction. And she heard something or spotted something. She didn't know what it was. I just gave a couple of leaves, and she assumed it was an elk, because she just went right back to feeding.
Yeah.
And we walked right on by her and didn't even spook her.
Here are some examples of the cow and calf talk we are discussing. Although we call it cow and calf talk, bulls also use this as a means of communicating with the herd.
I wanted to learn that technique, what would you say in time, just the average length of time to master this bugling art?
Oh, it takes about a month. If you can get some noise out of a diaphragm, you know, any kind of noise at all, and you just keep working on it when you're driving in your vehicle, up and down the road, or wherever.
Just make some noise. Now, you place that just about a ½ inch behind your front teeth, is that correct?
Right, ½ inch behind your front teeth. And then you arch your tongue like that and push it up against the top of your mouth. And you want to seal off the back of it so the air doesn't escape. And then the air goes over the front part and causes a vibration.
So in other words, it's air going underneath your tongue, but against the diaphragm, and makes this noise.
You
this
bet.
bugling sound.
Right. And if you want to make it higher, you push the tongue, you know, harder against the diaphragm, and that causes your different pitch. Now when I start out with a like that. I do that with my throat.
Get that grunt,
Right.
that grunt in there. That's real impressive. That just impresses the hell out of me. You had pretty good success yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We almost called one bull in and had him in pretty close, and then the wind switched, and of course there's nothing you can do about that.
That wind plays tricky.
Yeah, that
Tricks
was in
on
the
them,
morning.
No doubt.
And then we were up on this mountain, so we stayed up, way up high, so they wouldn't get our scent. And we laid there till about 4 or 5 o'clock, and then we started walking around doing some bugling. And right before dark, we got one to answer. And it was a big old bull. He had a real deep sounding voice.
Good 6x6.
Yeah, and that 6x6 came into the meadow and came about 40 yards away, and then he turned broadside and walked like this. And when he walked, he kind of angled away, and the bow hunter, Kenny, just missed him. You know, he shot for 40 yards and he just went under him.
One underneath him, shot him. Well, that's kind of, that's easily done, misjudged distance out here in these mountains.
Yeah,
it really is.
Especially your first elk.
That's right. And you're looking at that elk, and you judge it at 40, and he might be downhill like that. He might be 45 or 50.
Yeah.
And Kenny Nose thought that probably was good 50 yards.
Sure.
But
and it's different type of terrain than what you guys are probably from. You know, a little bit different.
Absolutely. That
makes it harder
a whole
to
lot
judge.
different than the state of Missouri. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I bet it is.
But would you say that this is the average bow equipment that?
Pretty much nowadays, yep. Compound bow with a bow quiver on it and a bow sight. I see you using a peep sight. Some guys use it, some guys don't. You know.
I like that peep sight. That just, I got me a grouse yesterday, and he's about 25 yards, and that peep sight helps me bring right in there. Jim helped me clean that sucker.
Yeah. Well, if you can get a grouse at 25 yards, you should be able to hit an elk.
Well, that's what I hope.
But I've seen some guys miss them.
Well,
Yeah. And I
you know,
see you've got on your string. You got double knocking points here, both above and below your knock, and that keeps it from sliding around. That's
well, that's also a reference point. I know just by looking at those knocks if they're the right distance apart. And if I see that the distance is different, then I got to check something, because that knock location will definitely change the arrow flight.
You bet it will. Yeah. One thing I would suggest on your bow is to get some moleskin or adhesive back felt and put it on this whole area. Anywhere you can strike this with your arrow. Because if you get excited and you clunk your arrow against your shelf,
Elk's
that
gone.
elk is gone.
Yeah.
I'll show you my bow later on, and I got this whole thing anywhere where I could hit it with the arrow, even up on the sight, and sometimes I even cover the bottom pin with the sight. You know?
That's absolutely a good idea. Right. Well, for the afternoon, we'll go up here and eat some lunch, take a nap, and get back after these rascals.
Yeah, we're gonna do about the same thing the elk are doing, and that's bed down. Bed down for the afternoon. When it starts getting, the shadows start getting long, we'll get out and see if we can get those things bugling.
Fantastic. I'm ready.
Okay, let's go get them.
Let's go get them. You know, back in Missouri, when you see this, this is bucks, and they're in a rut, and they're thrashing these trees and leaving their scent. Is this what elk's doing out here in Wyoming?
Pretty much, you bet. We saw a bunch of these boughs laying on the ground, and what a bull did is he got in here and just raking his old antlers back and forth, just tearing this tree all to hell.
Uh-huh.
And it's
They
kind of
scrape
like
the ground a little bit there too, don't they?
Yep, kind of like he's just relieving his frustration.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't tell you whether or not he'd come back to this spot, you know, but we know there's a bull in the area.
Yeah.
And well, we'll try to bugle them in later on tonight.
Great, great. This will be exciting.
Yeah.
We know now that this is evidence of a bull in the area, and possibly a good bull.
You bet it could be. He really worked this tree over.
Yeah, you can see how he's got it all broke up, and he just tore the limbs right off of it.
Yeah. And he's got some pretty good reach too, so
Yes, he does.
that kind of indicates he's got some long tines. Right here in the ground, you can see where he's really been stamping his foot,
Yeah,
almost like he's making a scrape like a whitetail do.
yeah, and same
Right
way
here.
here.
Right. So he's a big old boy.
Yeah, I'll be anxious to see him this evening.
I'd like to see him, I tell you that.
Yeah.
You know, with white-tailed deer, if you find a scrape, you can use that to pattern the buck. They always seem to make their scrapes under an overhanging branch, and they put scent on that branch with their forehead, their preorbital gland, which is the gland at the lower corner of their eyes, and with saliva. The scrape is used as a calling card for does when they come into heat. It's a form of advertisement. One of the elk's main means of advertising is the bugle. I think that because the elk can be located so easily by their bugling, they really haven't been studied as intensively as the deer as to why they rub on trees and leave other sign. So we don't really know the full significance of finding a rub or a torn up tree or a torn up piece of ground. We do know that elk rub their forehead and preorbital glands on trees. This fall I had the pleasure of watching a nice bull working on a tree. He'd rub his forehead and antlers on the tree. He'd also rub his teeth on the tree. So at the same time, he had to be depositing saliva. And when they are working on a tree, they spend a great deal of time smelling it. So undoubtedly, they do leave a lot of scent. So maybe this is a calling card or a means of advertisement. In any event, the bull seems to derive a great deal of enjoyment while working on a tree. Now the bull is reworking an old rub. This is one that was made in a previous year. This seems to happen quite often, as I've encountered this many times, where I found both old rubs and fresh rubs in close proximity. When I'm scouting, one thing that I like to look for is both fresh rubs and older rubs. That means that they're not only using the area this year, but they have used it in previous years. You may have stumbled onto one of their traditional rutting grounds. Studies have shown that elk tend to use the same areas every year for rutting if conditions remain the same. However, I don't think that it would be a good idea to set up a stand near an elk rub, because I don't think that there's a very good chance that he'll return to that same area while you're waiting for him. Notice that there's a distinct difference in color between the new rub and the old one. This is the old rub that he reworked. Rubs will tell you that there's a bull in the area, but I don't think rubs are worth waiting by. But wallows are a different matter. If you can find the wallow that they are using and the weather hasn't turned too cold, you have an excellent chance of having that bull come into that same wallow. It's definitely worthwhile to set up at a heavily used wallow. Wallows are mud holes that bull elk just love to roll around in and thrash around in. If you've observed enough elk, you've no doubt seen bulls caked with mud. Bull elk wallow just before or during the rut. Biologists say that the wallowing habit is caused by a bull's arousal during breeding time and is an important part of their fall ritual. If you find several wallows in a small area with plenty of rub trees nearby and plenty of tracks, you've found yourself a hot spot. If you find an active wallow, watch it in the late afternoon. Bulls will commonly visit wallows every day. It's quite easy to determine if a mud hole is being wallowed in because the soft earth shows clear prints or tracks and sometimes antler gouges. If the bull has been there recently, the water may be muddy. And that's what we found here.
Oh, hell, look at them fresh tracks.
Yeah, I'm talking about that's old.
Oh.
See, this is not old. See the stuff still down there?
It's
See
only a
the
couple days
grass
old.
laying down in there? That's not old. See that? That's just been bedded down today. There's a lot of elk, fresh elk sign
Yeah,
here.
you bet.
Probably 2 or 3, couple cows and a bull here.
Well, that's all fresh.
Oh yeah, that's all
wet
fresh.
down.
That's right. Well, you can see that's just tore up there where it's home. If, I don't
Look
know.
at the antler scrapes right here.
Right here, that's what I'm saying. If this is the spread of his antlers, he's got a spread on him. See here?
Mm-hmm.
You can see where he gouged the ground with his antlers. If you were here, you would smell his distinctive odor too. During the rut, bulls commonly paw at the ground with their hoofs and rake it with their antlers. And when they're doing this, they are constantly palpitating their penis. As they do this, they are spraying urine on the ground, on their bellies, legs, and neck. This is part of the mating ritual. His strong scent not only makes him more fearsome to other bulls, but it makes him more attractive to cows. Urinating also serves another important biological function. Bulls sometimes rut so heavily that they use up all of their fat reserves and then start depleting their muscles. When this occurs, their urine takes on a characteristic strong odor. Other bulls can sense his depleted condition and will challenge him. Many times when they go through this ritual, they lay on the ground where they have been pawing and urinating. Last year, I was in a tree stand near a wallow. I was delighted when a herd of cows came by and unknowingly volunteered to be live decoys. Soon, 2 small raghorn bulls began feeding my way from off to the right. One of the raghorns decided to make a move on the cows. Hi there! With that puny set of antlers, they were about as interested in him as a woman on the beach is interested in a 98-pound weakling. They began to walk away from him. A third bull, who was larger, but no monster by any stretch of the imagination, came out and decided to show off in front of the ladies. So he chased off the little raghorn with a menacing rush. But he wasn't done showing off yet. He went into the marsh and began pawing and thrashing his antlers in the marsh grass. Bulls sometimes do this to make themselves look bigger and more fearsome to other bulls. But this one seemed to be trying to impress the ladies. I decided to give him a bugle to see what he would do. He quit raking and looked my way. When he couldn't see anything, he resumed working on his headgear. So I gave another bugle, and then some cow talk. Pretty soon here he came, looking for the challenger and some possible cows. He was quite a sight, decked out with all that grass on his head. But he thought that he was really something. Just give him a couple years, and he'll have all the cows that he can handle. Prior to the previous scene, where we investigated the wallow and left our scent all over the place, we set Nelson up in a concealed area where he would have a good shot at any bulls coming into the wallow. Unfortunately, a storm front began moving in and the winds began to swirl. Any elk coming into the area would likely have caught our scent in the swirling air. Therefore, we had to abandon the idea for the day. Upon investigating at the wallow, we discovered a bear track. Jim thought it could be a grizzly, and a possible reason why we couldn't seem to get the bulls to bugle that day.
That is a bear track.
Sure. Is it a grizzly?
By God, it's a hell of a big black bear if it isn't.
Yeah, I'll dig.
Look at there. Black bear's very seldom as large as your hand. We've got a she grizzly here in this country, have had for years. This may be why we're not hearing any bugling right here.
After leaving the wallow, we decided to walk the ridges and bugle. On the way east from the wallow, we discovered a very heavily used elk trail leading to the wallow. This showed a lot of potential for a stand site, so we investigated.
Looks like they come from the meadows. They hit this clear cut, wallered a little bit, and then headed right down this trail over.
Yep. That's the place to be, I guess. Early in the morning.
We can scout a good way out tonight so we can come up here slick tomorrow with no problems.
Yeah, we'll try it.
When bow hunting, it's important to stay as odor-free as possible. If you get sweated up and go for a couple days without bathing, those elk will be able to smell you a long ways away. In order to cut down on body odor, you should bathe as often as possible, even if it means using an icy cold mountain stream. Instead of using commercial deodorants and strong-smelling soaps, use baking soda, which is an excellent deodorant. Clean clothes are also important if you want to cut down on odors that spook game. My hunt with Emerald Creek Outfitters was finally winding down, and I was sad to see it end. I had a great time in the mountains with the other two hunters and had become friends with the guides and staff. In just a few short days, we had shared a lot. On the final afternoon, we gathered around camp and exchanged stories about the adventures of the previous days and other hunts. I would be leaving in the morning to join my bow hunting friends from Michigan and Wisconsin for another 2 weeks of elk hunting.
Somebody looked like they was wearing them cabbage patch boots.
Hey, it ain't cabbage patch.
No, you ought to hear what Mark has to say about them cabbage patches.
They ain't worth a
He ripped his out, about broke his legs, rubbed all the hide off his toes. Oh, is he cussing?
The first night we got in here, I took Nelson for an evening hunt.
Yeah.
And about the first 10 minutes he had him on, that was the last.
That's
we were
it.
ready to cross
No
the creek
shit.
out here.
Hey, we crossed the creek out here, and I knew I was going to get wet because they buckle up with those Velcro stitching. Well, I knew my feet got wet. Well, that's all right. We went on around this thing, and Jim says, now up on this mound, up on this clear cut up here is a waller. Go up there and circle with the wind in your face. I said, okay, I got to cross this goddamn river one more time. So I got my bow in my hand, and the bottom of these boots are rubber. Okay? I go bust my ass right in the middle of the river.
I thought I had a whale out there in Emerald.
You didn't even see me. You didn't even see me. He was sleeping. He was sleeping. I snuck up on him, but about a foot away from him. He goes, huh?
I must have seen Jeremiah Johnson trying to catch trout.
I fell, flat on my butt. I still went on up there and hunted, but when I got back in, I was,
pissed off too.
And pissed off.
Chased a whole herd of elk till he wasn't even out shooting. And that's the fact.
Mm-hmm.
You mark it on a rock.
Yep, you bet.
Oh, give me a 40-yard shot. Or 35.
Well, climb in his hip pocket and you might get one.
Kenny's only missed 2
I'll
six-point
give you
bulls
first
already.
shot. I'm gonna get shooting.
Take second shot, you're gonna have one hauling ass. When that arrow goes fast and they don't wait around. I was shooting, man, they're getting it now.
Here's a good example of the type of areas I like to hunt. There's a good mixture of aspens and dark timber, with open meadows and parks where the elk like to come out to graze in the evening and morning. You can easily move to higher or lower elevations depending upon where you find the elk. The previous hunt was conducted back in a designated wilderness area where a licensed outfitter or guide was required. Our next hunt took place on national forest land, which was available to anybody that could buy a tag. The terrain was not nearly as rough and rugged as the previous terrain. If you do your homework and study the harvest statistics, you can locate areas to hunt that you can drive to with your four-wheel drive vehicles. If you pick carefully, you can have excellent hunting by setting up in a camp that is centrally located in the area you want to hunt. You can walk out from there or drive to nearby areas and then hunt. Backpack tents are nice, but they can get mighty crowded and cramped on a long hunt, especially if the weather turns cold and miserable. I like to camp in a teepee because of its charm and practicality. You can build a fire inside when the weather gets bad. You always seem to get some wet and cold weather on an elk hunt. The fire not only warms you up, but keeps your spirits up if you can stay warm and dry. Horses are helpful for packing out the meat, but they are not essential if you are willing to bone out the meat and pack it on your back. But horses are also a liability because you have to feed and water them and make sure they don't wander away. Besides using them for packing, I use them for scouting and for packing into more remote areas to set up spike camps for several days. When I'm not using the horses, I keep one tied or corralled and hobble the other one and leave him free to graze. If you are lucky enough to have access to an elk herd, it's a good idea to study them and learn their behavior. This also gets you accustomed to their large size in relationship to deer, so that when you finally do get one in close, you don't go all to pieces and blow the shot. You might want to practice bugling elk in national parks or other areas where they aren't being hunted during the rut. It's a great confidence builder to know that you can call one in. But don't mess up your area or someone else's hunting area by educating the bulls prior to the hunt. They are hard enough to call in the way it is. If you don't live near elk country, you can still learn a lot about their behavior. You can learn a lot by reading archery magazines and books and by watching videos like this one or one of my other videos, Elk Behavior and the Rut. Elk hunting is tough work. If you want to be one of the few hunters that scores consistently, plan your elk hunt long before the elk season begins and get into top shape. And don't give up until the end of the last day of the hunt. You can't kill an elk unless you're out there where the elk live. One of the old-time elk hunters I know says, "Son, you've got to hunt where the elk are, because if they ain't there, you ain't gonna get them." Here's another example of the techniques I use for getting in close. By now, you should be familiar with this. I've got a bull responding to my bugle, so I'm moving in and setting up in several increments. Here's how the exchange sounds. The last time the bull bugled, he was close enough to raise the hair on the back of my neck. Although some parts of the next scene are wobbly, I've left in almost all of the scene so that you can see what calls I make in the final stages of getting a bull to come in close. When I tried to turn my body and raise higher in order to see, the bull spotted my movement and spooked. As he ran, I gave a strong bugle, which stopped him, and as you'll see, I was able to coax him back in again. I called the preceding bull in on a bright sunny morning on September 3rd. I've called bulls in and shot them as early as Labor Day weekend. Later on during my practicing, I called in this dandy 7-point bull, and then this real nice 6-pointer. A lot of information can be learned by sharing your hunting experiences with your buddies.
Where we were today, we're up in the Aspen, and there was very few places to hide up there.
Yeah. Like Paul and I last year, we heard that one bugle.
Guess they're just piling them up.
Heard him bugle once, and I said, oh, that's another bow hunter. Let's see if we can call him in, you know, at least let him know there's some other bow hunters in the area. So I bugled back, and he came back with a double bugle that would sounded real. The first one sounded
Silly.
like a bow hunter didn't know what he's doing. And the minute he bugled back, I could see him about 120 yards out. I told Paul, here he comes. He left the cows and started coming in. And we had to kneel down right now, and we didn't have much cover. We're just in the lodgepole pine, you know. I think he saw where that was. Wasn't very much cover. He just came in steady till he was about 50 yards away, and I could tell he was slowing up. He's going to stop. So I grunted like that with a grunt tube behind me. He just came in. Rest of the way till he's 15 yards. I was wondering when the hell is he going to turn broadside. He's coming in. I got 15 yards away and he turned broadside. Then I pulled back on my arrow, and I usually have felt on my arrow rest. And the day before I'd been practicing with my judo point, and I must have fell off. That old, when I drew my arrow, like that old bull looked, and he was just ready to bolt when I let fly. I had to shoot. I mean, I had to go shoot like that. I nailed him. He only went about 70 yards. The old legs started weaving around, down he went. Paul was more excited than I was. The funny part of it was, when he was at 50 yards and I grunted, I looked over towards Paul and said,
Take him.
I looked at Paul and he didn't have an arrow in his bow. He says, I didn't think they came in that quick. And they don't. That was the fastest I ever had one come in.
What do you do when you get them in sight of 100 yards?
Oh, I bugle and grunt and stuff. Grab a branch, rake down branches. Try to sound like one rubbing his antlers. I try to get him worked up. I don't know, I think sometimes I bugle too much when I listen to my tapes. You know, you listen to some of the advice you see in the archery magazines and the audio tapes that you buy in the market, and they say bugle once every 5 minutes and stuff. I've never gotten the bull heated up doing that. I bugle a lot more frequently than that. But I try to bugle about the same interval that he's doing. You know, or if he seems like he's cooling off or whatever, I bugle more frequently. stops, give some screaming, a lot of grunting.
Just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, whatever works. I heard of some guys taking their canteen and dump it on the ground to simulate urinating, you know.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of thirsty days, too.
Yeah.
Bring a 2-gallon jug with them.
I imagine you almost have to start thinking like one when they start coming in. You almost got to act like one.
Oh, I've had times when I've got so heated up I felt like raking a tree myself. Jeez, some of them really get you fired up.
One thing I have learned from experience, though, is that as long as the bull is coming your way, let him come. Here I had a real nice bull coming my way, and if I give any calls at all, they should be soft cow calls. But I made the mistake of bugling, and since I wasn't hidden real well with my camera and tripod, he pinpointed my location. He started to move away. Had I waited, he would have come a lot closer. The conversation with Jerry and John must have paid off, because the next day when we got back to camp, Jerry was waiting for us with a big grin on his face. So we trailered up the horses and took them as far as we could, and then rode them in and met John, who was already busy quartering out his 5-point bull. Well, congratulations, John. That's not too bad for your first bull. Let's get Jerry down here to help tell the story of how you got him.
Well, we started out this morning a little bit right after light, right before light. Headed down the horse trail, down into the meadow. Got down there quite a ways, decided we'd head north, over towards a stand of aspens. Got pretty close to the aspens, heard one bugle.
Did he bugle first, or did he?
He bugled.
He bugled first.
And then we started going after him, bugling, trying to get as close as we could. We got pretty close to him, and he just took off. Didn't want anything to do with us.
We worked him for a good 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
We worked him down to a little meadow and across the other side, and we couldn't get him to come across the other side, and we were stuck. We couldn't go across the meadow either. So Jerry kept bugling on him, and pretty soon he just quit. So we climbed that ridge over there.
Climbed the ridge up here. We thought we lost him. Bugled once, didn't hear nothing. Sat down, had a candy bar. Then we getting ready to take off for the truck, and we heard him bugle. We didn't even bugle at this one either. He bugled, and we started going after him.
You're ready to give up then, huh?
Well, I don't know if this was the same one or
It
not.
may even have been a different bull. I know I've done that.
Right.
Bugle at one and he's shut up, and then you're sitting there in the same spot, and pretty soon here comes another one. Now tell me about your final strategy. What did you do to get in close?
Well, we heard him. He was right over here on the hillside, and we started sneaking up as close as we could. I was doing some cow talk and bugling as loud as I could. He was just getting mad.
He was answering just about every one of your bugles?
Yeah, he answered right back just about every time, really loud and bellowing.
Was he raking trees?
You could hear him just raking the hell out of the trees.
Yeah? Yeah, be darned.
He sounded good and mean.
I understand he got about 5 yards from you, John?
He was real close. About time we figured we were about 50, 60 yards away from him, we both split apart, and I moved over about 30 yards away from Jerry. I got behind a small set of pine trees that were just a little over the top of my head as I knelt down. And Jerry brought him right down in, and he started working his way towards Jerry, and then he cut back and he pulled over and he worked his way right in front of these pine trees. And he stood there about 10 yards right in between both of us, and he was just raking away, and Jerry was giving him some cow talk, and he was just busting that brush with his head, and he'd stick it out a little bit, and then he just wouldn't quite move out there, and then finally he took one step around that pine tree and faced right dead at me. And he just walked right straight at me, and he was from me to you by the time I finally shot him. He picked his head up and he moved his head, and I shot him right in the rib cage.
So he turned his head around to where he had a angling shot towards the lungs.
It was funny, but Jerry had his bugle turned behind him, and he was trying to get him to move around, and he bugled one time, and he spun his head, and he looked the other direction of where Jerry was.
Looked the opposite direction.
It was just lucky that he did. If he'd have looked the other way, then I'd have had a shoulder shot, and that was it.
Yeah.
Really wouldn't have had a nice broadside shot like I got.
That must have blew your mind when he came in that close.
He was beautiful.
I bet.
Just standing
He was
there.
pretty. It's the
10 yards away, just raking on that tree.
first time I ever thought I'd shoot one. I thought it'd probably be a spike.
That's not bad for your first try, I tell you.
When this one came in, it was a real treat to watch him. and he ran about 60 yards, and we sat down for an hour, and Jerry bugled a few more times. We heard him stop. As soon as I shot him, Jerry bugled, and we heard him stop up in here. And we sat down, had a little drink of water, and we waited an hour, and then we came after him.
Yeah, that's the same type of strategy I use. When I hit one, I bugle right now, and then I keep on bugling, you know, off and on for half hour. If I'm sitting there a half hour, I'll bugle
I
intermittent.
bugle about every 5 minutes.
You bet.
Yeah.
And that way they think there's another bull around or another herd around, and they just don't know what's happening to them.
Yeah, he didn't go far. He didn't go more than 60 yards, 60, 80 yards. That's about all. So.
Good bull. Now let's have Jerry and John take us to the actual site of the kill and walk us through the story.
The elk came down this trail right here. Came down here and was raking on this pine tree, breaking branches. And I was right down in the brush there about 25 yards. I didn't have a very good shot, so I bugled a couple of cow talk, and he walks down through here. Now, this was about the only shot I had right in here, but I knew John was over here somewhere. Kept coming up the hill here. He's got tracks right here. He stopped for just a second, looked around, and I gave a couple cow calls there. He kept walking. Elk was coming up the hill here.
When the bull got right there, he stopped. And he was sitting there, and he probably sat there for about 15, 20 seconds just raking his horns. He had his horns down low, and he was just raking them.
There's all kinds of fresh, broken off branches here.
And he made a move to come out, and I drew back once on him in the opening, and he stopped. And then he threw his head back some more, and he ran around, and then he made his turn, and he come right at me, just like that. And then when he's looking right at me, I was sitting here like this, and then when he stopped, I was just like this. He threw his head the other way, and I drew back, and he came back, and I hit him right in the shoulder blade.
Oh, man. That sucker is close. I mean, he's right on top of you.
He was walking right in on top of me.
Whew.
It was fun. We watched him thrash around in there for a long time. It was a riot.
I bet he didn't go very far from here either. I bet he didn't go,
He
what,
ran-
60, 80 yards at the most?
We went about 60 yards. Well, Jerry bugled right away. As soon as he heard the arrow hit, he was sitting right here. He was just on the other side of the brush, and he could hear me shoot and heard the arrow, you know, thwop, really hard. And as soon as he heard that, he bugled, and he could hear the bull stop up on the hill. And it died probably about 80 yards from here.
I'll be darned.
Lungs and liver.
Man, can't beat that. Now let's look at it from the bugler's point of view.
I was right here when we got close to bugling, and I could see him coming through the brush up here, the thick stuff. And John was right over there about 30 yards, so I tried to make the bull go between us. Did some cow talk out this way, and he started coming at me, and then he turned right through 20, 25 yards right here. I didn't have a very good shot. It was kind of brushy. He went up the hill there. I knew John was right there somewhere. I sat here for about 10, 15 seconds, and I heard John shoot, and I knew the thing was close because he just let go of the string and the arrow hit.
Now when you did your cow talk, you turned your grunt tube which way?
I pointed it out this way so that he'd come between us.
That's what he did too, didn't he?
Yep.
It works. It's a good technique. First one out in the wild. That's pretty good.
This is the first elk that I've ever seen in the wild.
Man, oh man,
First
that's
shot.
something else.
First shot ever made.
And he comes up within 5 yards of you. What were you doing, rolling in some elk urine so you could smell it?
No, I think I just had a good guide and good bugler. Did a nice job of bringing them
The
in.
wind was well in our favor.
Well, it
was really
takes a lot more than wind, I guarantee you. You got to do some good bugling to get them in that close. We use either of two methods to quarter out our elk. One is the double hatchet method, where you use one hatchet to strike the other. The other is to use a meat saw to saw through the backbone. We put the quarters into elk bags. This not only keeps them clean, but during warm weather, it keeps off the flies. By the way, these two hard-working guys are my brother Tim on the left and Denny on the right. By the end of the hunt,
We survived.
we would be packing out bulls for them too. I like to have all the members of my elk camp visit the site of the kill and participate in the butchering. This not only divides up the work, but it gives the other guys the feeling that if my buddy can get lucky, I can do it too. And it's that positive attitude that they need to keep on going when the going gets tough. During rifle season, I wouldn't tie the antlers up like this where they are visible to other hunters. But during the bow season, I feel perfectly safe doing it this way.
Make sure you got a lot of room. These horns. What?
No, there's nothing wrong with your TV set. This is the actual sound that this bull made. This guy just felt that he had to answer every bugle that he heard. He bugled so much that he became hoarse. There's a lot of variation in the sound of bugles from one bull to another. Even the same bull can make quite a variety of sound. This big guy simply wore out his voice box. I wish my coyote calling technique worked as good as my elk calling, because then I could have year-round action. I spotted this young coyote last September. He was in a meadow catching grasshoppers. Since he was just a pup, I thought he would be a cinch to call in. So I used a technique that has worked on some coyotes. I licked the back of my hand and started squeaking on it. I'll show you how well it worked. Oh well, let's get back to elk calling. Early the next morning after John got his bull, Denny and Tim and I heard a bull bugling. We got to the creek and there was only one way to get across. This is where good waterproof footgear really pays for itself. As the sun got higher, we got close and spotted a nice bull. There was another bull closer, but we decided to try for the bigger one. But there were quite a few cows between us and the big bull. At first, they were unaware of our presence. But unfortunately, we got spotted by a cow. If you noticed, the cow urinated upon spotting danger. I've watched a lot of elk do this. If you jump elk out of the timber, you can smell a strong urine odor. I believe that they do this so that if a predator is stalking them by smell, he gets the strong odor and gets the impression that the elk are still there. But when he arrives, they have left and are long gone. One by one, the herd became aware of her alarm and they headed for the safety of the timber. Their body language told us that they were ready to spook. Again, we passed up the smaller bull in hopes of getting a shot at the larger one. You don't shoot big bulls if you shoot the small ones first. The larger bull came across in front of us, but he was just out of range. If he had been standing still, I probably would have taken the shot, but a moving target with a bow and arrow requires a great deal of lead, and it's too easy to miscalculate and hit him in a non-vital area. It's better to leave him go and try again. When the elk got to the timber, they settled down, so I knew they weren't spooked that badly. Evidently, the cow had not gotten a good look at us, or if she had not communicated her fear to the rest of the herd. So we waited until they got into the timber and settled down before we dared to cross. He sounds far enough away to cross now, but we weren't the only ones after them. A satellite bull went charging after the herd. It's not uncommon for several satellite bulls to be around the periphery of the herd. We used the same procedure as before to move in and set up. We got several glimpses of the bull, but we could not get a shot. Herd bulls like to lead their cows away from an intruder. The bull continued to move away from us up the mountain. Several times Tim snuck in closer to set up, but then the next bugle we would hear would be more distant, so off we'd go again. This is where being in good shape and being persistent really pays off. It's frustrating to call a bull in close enough for a shot, only to find that you can't shoot because trees and branches would deflect your arrow. Or the bull stopped behind a tree while you were at full draw. Your bow was getting heavy, and you couldn't hold it any longer, so you had to let down. Then, when your bow isn't drawn, the bull goes through the opening before you can draw, aim, and release. That's what happened to me. I had a hurried shot, but I let it go because the bull was headed towards Tim. Some bulls can be really frustrating. This one started raking a tree with his butt end facing towards us. This isn't a good shot with a bow and arrow, and I'd recommend that you pass it up. What the bull is doing at this point is stalling. He can hear the other bull, but he can't see him. He's waiting for the other bull to make an appearance. When he does this, I also rake on a tree. In addition to bugling, I give cow and calf talk to give him the impression that I've got some cows with me. Herd bulls will often lead you on a merry chase through some rugged terrain. If the terrain isn't too steep, you can keep them within hearing range. Get them to bugle and then move on in. As long as they keep bugling, you have a chance. I've had to follow herd bulls from first light until 10:30 in the morning before I've gotten them to turn on me. I can't emphasize enough the importance of being in good physical condition and being persistent if you want to bag a big bull. Tim's bull led us straight uphill for nearly an hour before I got him to turn on us. And let me tell you, it was some tough climbing. Good pile of blood right there. Blood there, quite a bit of blood on the bush. Then he got this big pile of blood here, here. Right here is his last step. Last step, and he rolled down the hill. And right down there is as far as he made it. Nice bowl, Tim.
It's all up to you, Ted. Just got lucky.
He's been mad.
No, I wasn't. I thought you were gonna shoot, but
Yeah, if I had my bow up 1 second sooner, he'd have done it. He stopped and he came in broadside about 20 yards away, just kind of angling, but he's walking kind of fast. And then he got by a tree and started raking it, and he's facing me right head on. So I put my bow down, got the grunt tube out, and I'm like that. And as soon as I did that, he left the tree and came through the opening about as wide as his body is long. By the time I got my bow up, I was on him, but I wasn't steady on him, so I didn't let go. I figured he's going right by Tim anyhow. And thing stepped out 10 yards from Tim. Oh man.
Quartering forward.
About 2 more steps I could have released. I thought we'd be able to shoot right at the same time. Hell, when Tim's arrow hit, I let fly, and that sucker, he jumped
6 yards.
6 yards from from where he's standing to where he bounded the next time. 6 yards. 18 feet.
Me to you, Chris. He was gone just like that.
Took off. My arrow was body length behind by the time it got there. You know, and I shot as soon as I heard Tim's arrow go. I let mine go. That sucker was just like red jumping a creek.
No warning.
That's right. Took off, and he was stumbling. His head was down. He was running like that, you know, like a heart shot deer. Head was down, and his feet was going. I thought he was gonna go down any second. He was just barely moving along. When he made it down the top of the hill, and he's standing there, and his head was like that already. I knew he wasn't gonna go far. But we waited about 50 minutes before we went and tracked him. He was dead.
That was a long 50 minutes.
Yeah. He started moving, just steady blood trail all the way down that hill, and he got right up here.
You can see
Stood
blood
by
on the
that
log
tree.
there.
There was blood by that log, and he just toppled over.
He was just pumping it up.
Oof.
Good job.
Yep.
Yeah, man. It's pretty.
He was up against the tree, and he must have just fell backwards.
And down in here.
He laid just like this. As we rented a horn.
Little straight in the old mud, huh?
Yeah.
Managed to keep it pretty clean. The preceding kill scene was reenacted, but was realistic in showing how bulls can come into the bugler. Unfortunately, we were not able to get Tim's kill on film. Let's go back to the actual scene and show you how it happened. Okay, now here's a bow hunter's eye view of what that bull looked like when he came in. Jerry's right behind the tree, and that's where the bull stopped when he started raking on the tree, and I gave a bugle, and immediately he came across that opening. As soon as he got behind these bushes, Tim drew. He had his bow drawn, and the minute that bull stepped out at about 8 or 9 yards, he released, and that's right where he nailed him, broadside. Good shot. I tell you, it takes a lot to stay calm under those conditions. Didn't lose anything. We can't get across the meadow. The wind is wrong to go up above them, so we're gonna have to wait until they get into timber. And then try to sneak up on them. Once they get to timber, we'll give them some time to get up so we know that they can't see us cross, and we'll go after them. Zoom in on them babies. There were about 35 elk out there with a pretty nice herd bull, but he was reluctant to leave the herd of cows to cross the open meadow. And since the wind was wrong, we could not sneak around to head them off. So at this point, all we could do was wait. We had to wait until about 8:30 in the morning until they drifted into the timber.
See the bull? Is he going on the right?
After they got far enough in, we went after them. Instead of the herd bull coming in, it was one of the satellite bulls. Now, if you watch carefully, you can see the bull's movement in the brush as he catches Denny's scent and then turns and flees. There he is. There he goes.
That sucker come right up to there. And then turn around and split. Danny's right over there. Let's go ask Danny what happened. Golly. You were right there?
Yep.
That bull was right there about how many yards?
25? I didn't even.
Oh, he's closer than that.
Right.
That is closer than that.
20.
Yeah.
20 yards.
Oh, man.
Full draw, ready to shoot.
That's a lot. God. Get on her. Got your wind and just turn right now. Son of a fuck. Yeah. Well, he bugled me.
The herd bull was still bugling, so we went after them. After a half-mile chase, I spotted a bull trotting down the other side of the ravine and coming our way fast. We had to kneel down right now. There wasn't any time to find good cover, so we did our best to look as inconspicuous as possible. There he comes. Since he came from the direction of the herd bull's bugling, we thought it would be him, but it was a spike. But since this was the last day of the hunt for Jerry and Denny, they were willing to take anything. Any bull is a trophy if taken in fair chase with the bow and arrow. The bull looked in our direction, so I pointed the grunt tube off to the right and gave a short squeal. This reassured him that there were other elk around, so he kept on coming. Now Tim is set up with the camera right behind Denny. And what you're looking at here is between his bow and his bow quiver as he's at full draw.
It's in him.
You hit him?
It's in him.
Good shot. Nice clear shot. I was waiting for the one. I was waiting for him to shoot. Did you get it on film, Phil?
You bet.
All right, man.
He didn't get in real deep again.
Where'd you hit him?
It was right,
All
right
right,
there.
great,
Here.
great, great.
He was stumbling going down.
Mm-hmm. Way to go, Danny. God darn, that was neat. That guy just came down the hill on a trap.
No, bugling over here.
Was it a spike or a fork? Yeah, that's a spike. That's, yeah, the herd bull's bugling. He left the herd or something. I was looking right through Danny's bow. It should be on.
He's at 35 yards. Pin at 35.
After waiting an appropriate length of time for the bull to bleed out, we began tracking him. The arrow had penetrated the lungs and had left a good blood trail.
It's come about 20 yards so far. We got some first blood right in here. Blood on the log right here. He's really stunned when he goes to this point. Ooh, must have got a long way sprayed here. There he is! There he is! Nailed it. Right, right. Woo-hoo! Minute. Yeah, that didn't take 1 minute for him to go down. That ain't even 70 yards, and he's downhill.
Downhill the bullet.
Good shot, man.
Thank you, guide.
Tell you what, it didn't take long for him to pile up. It must have been only 60, 70 yards, and it's mostly downhill. I think if it wasn't downhill, he wouldn't have made it this far. He crashed and burned right here and got up, and this is all the farther he made it.
Dead on his feet.
Well, he's pretty coloration too.
Yeah, they just pretty.
Real pretty horn. Andy, to see him when he first started coming, we got the herd bull bugling there, and all of a sudden I says, we're walking over the top of the hill here, and he says, hold it, here he comes. And we didn't have any cover at all. We just had to kneel
We
right
all
down.
sat down.
And just sat right down there. I guess we looked like 3 Christmas trees or something. He came right up the hill, and then he's below the hill, and I bugled just to keep him going. And he came in a little bit farther off to the side than I wanted. He was about 30, 33 yards out. And Jerry didn't quite have a shot. I had a shot, but I'm going to let you guys do the shooting, seeing it's your last day of the hunt. And he nailed him a little bit farther forward
Yeah.
than you'd like, but by God, it did the job.
Yeah.
The shoulder blade.
Yeah,
It had to be
did.
close.
It did.
It didn't go
You got
in
some-
very far.
Oh, you got some heavy muscle in there, just ahead of the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we thought it was all back in
I
there.
thought when it left him, it stuck out a long ways, but I thought I had him back in the shoulder.
Boy,
I took my time, just set up on it, just really took my time, forgot the horns were even there.
Yep.
And he stood for a long time just standing there. You know, just wasn't making one step. I thought, well, here it is.
I was wondering when you're going to shoot.
Yeah, took a long time. I thought, geez, none of these two guys got shot.
I was
Maybe I better shoot.
holding them. I just concentrated as hard as I could. Just try to hold on them. Because most of my problem has been looking at horns and you know where the arrow goes.
Yep.
I'll be darned. We got that herd bull bugling, so let's drag him out here and get some pictures. And we're going to go after the herd bull. We're going to let you gut him out.
Well, that's part of the ball game.
Let's talk to my friend Kenny Springs from Custer, South Dakota. I taught Kenny how to bugle, and he was supposed to meet us out there on the hunt. But somehow we got our signals crossed and didn't meet until after the hunt was over. Well, Ken, you got yourself a 6x5. You're supposed to meet us out there hunting. I told you which road to go down and meet us by No Name Creek and meet us by the middle branch of it. And I said it right near the end of the road. And I wasn't anticipating that they were going to build a new road in there, so we never did get together. You went in there and camped?
No, I went in too far.
Son of a gun, so we missed each other up there in the hunt. But I understand you did get a 6x5, and it didn't take you very long to do it. You want to tell us how you did it?
Ted's kind of got me suggested and got me interested in the elk hunt, so we headed out, although we didn't meet where we were supposed to. We had a good hunt anyway. I ended up hunting alone spent the actual 5 days over there, and about 3 days scouting out.
First 3 days that you scouted, you didn't hear a thing?
No, never heard a bugle, never heard nothing. I was in the wrong area. Apparently they were logging in there and the elk were all gone. So I went another about 10 or 12 miles away and found an area there was a few elk bugling, and camped there that night and went out the next morning, and I heard some elk in the distance bugle, and I went in and started hunting, and about 10 o'clock I done some bugling. There was a little 3-point come in, and he come in about 10 yards away, and I guess I felt good anyway. I didn't shoot at him. Probably should have. It was a good shot, broadside. Normally I would have took it.
It's hard to pass up that first one that comes in, but
yeah,
it was early in the hunt yet.
Yeah, I had lots of time, so I was no hurry, and he went left, and we went on. Well, I went on up the mountain, the ridge. It was a pretty steep ridge. I went back in another probably half a mile, heard another elk bugle, and went down and kind of set up into a real good spot. And
Now, when he bugled, did you answer him, or did you just go sneaking in?
no, I didn't. I didn't bugle. I snuck in to where figured I was probably 200 yards, maybe 150, 200 yards from him. And I bugled, and he come in, and I could see his feet, and he backed out and left. And at that time, I was going to do a little scraping on a tree, and I heard a noise behind me and turned around behind me, and there was a good-sized, I'd never seen his rack for sure, but it was probably a 5 or 6 point. It come in behind me about 30 yards
Just
away.
came in silently, never said a thing.
Never made a noise. And,
Yeah, I've had him do that.
yeah, couldn't get a shot at him. It was, it had been in right in the rear anyway. It wouldn't have been good. It was, but he snuck out. The other bull kept on bugling, so he disappeared. I couldn't see his feet. I looked in there with the glasses real close. Couldn't see no movement, so I moved up to where I last seen him, and then probably went on a little farther. Now he kept bugling, and I moved in within about probably about 35 yards from him. And I got in a little draw, and I could see his horns in a tree move. He was scraping a big tree there. He peeled the bark plumb off from it.
About what, this size?
Yeah, 5-6 inch diameter, large, big old pine tree there. And he stripped it bare and took the limbs all off. I found a good little spot, got in front of some good cover, and kind of listened to what you said on your VCR you made there, and kind of watched some of the background. And I backed down into a good cover area and let out a small bugle on my bugle, and he come charging up out of there just on a real fast trot. And he was, when I shot, he was probably well, about 12 paces, so it'd been 10, 12 yards.
12 yards away. Ah, be darned. He's coming on the move, kind of just.
Yeah, the kind of
a very slight quartering angle.
Slight quarter, not quite broadside, but it was still a good shot. And it was, the arrow went in about 2 feet, almost to the feathers, and he took off running, made about a 50-yard circle. I bugled again. He stopped, turned, looked at me, and then he run down the hill. He run probably about 100 yards total distance. But it was the first experience I've ever had, you know, actually with a bow hunting elk. And like Ted told me, he ever started, he probably never quit, and I think he's right.
Yeah, you get hooked on it.
Yeah, it's there forever.
Well, you did pretty good.
I think everything was my favor, but it was very, very, very educational.
We didn't get together. That's too bad we didn't get together out there, but you did pretty good on your own.
Yeah, we'd had a good hunt.
It took you one day to get your elk after listening to my tape and my VCR and my audio tape. I can't say that attributed to all of it, because I know you're a good hunter. You got some real nice whitetail heads on your wall, and you don't get those by being a poor hunter.
Well, I think hunting whitetail helped, but watching your VCR and talking with you, and it's just spending some time kind of studying it, you know, before you get out there and spoof everything out, I think paid off. It's very challenging, and anybody who wants a real thrill, it's probably the biggest thrill I ever had, even to beat some big whitetail.
Yeah, I tell you, I still like the whitetail, but the elk, they're just something different about them.
They're rather so big, they come in that close, they think you're going to run right over top of you, you know.
Yeah, they're huge. You put your old sight pins on, their chest is that wide, and you put your sight
it's hard
pins.
to pick out a spot to shoot at. They're so big, it's hard to even, I know when I drew on this guy, it took me a little while to pick the spot because they're just so big, the body's so big there, you don't know where to aim at. But yeah, it was a great experience. I had some other elk that were within bow range, actually, but those two were the closest shots, or the closest elk that come in. I had other elk that were answer, and I worked within probably like 50 yards of them, but the conditions and everything weren't quite right. But for the first time out, I thought it was fantastic.
Well, I think you did great. You know, I guess you'll probably admit you're not the world's greatest bugler.
Oh, that kind of sounds weird. But take some practice.
I think you used the right technique in going about it. If you don't have a real great bugle, or if they're not responding well to your bugle, that's the thing to do. Is if they're bugling, work your way in close, and make sure the wind is right. That's probably the most important thing.
You know, I really study the wind. Well, that'd be like hunting whitetail or any other game. You got to really watch the wind conditions and use that in your favor, and I think that helps. And then being at the right place at the right time too, really, you know, it's like you say, the first area we went to, there just wasn't anything in there, and I moved around.
You've got to keep moving around. We hunted 9 different areas up there, 9 different spots. We just kept on moving around until we found the elk. And, that's the way you have to do it. If you just keep hunting one area and there's nothing in there, you're just wasting your time. And if you keep hunting one area that has elk in it, you're going to eventually drive them up, drive them out of there, or make them shut up. So you're wasting your time hunting an area over and over and over again. You're better off looking for new areas.
I think after they're once, you know, spoofed a little bit, they'll probably be like a deer. They're not going to come in they're going to be real reluctant to come back.
That's right. Yeah, if you spook a whitetail, he becomes nocturnal. He becomes real careful in his habits. And elk, they either leave the country, or they just don't answer your bugling.
They don't bugle.
Or they'll, like some of those, they'll come sneaking into the bugle.
Yeah, it's real interesting. I think if anybody wants to really get serious about it and spend some time, it's a thrill I'll never dreamt it was that much of a thrill. I've been hunting with a bow for a long time, and it'll make your heart pump faster than anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's fun, I tell you. I like that. I just live for that time of year when the old elk start bugling. You can get out there and get some good bow hunting action.
Yeah. Only thing I regret didn't start it 20 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't. You'd have so many trophies on your wall now you wouldn't have room for them.
Well, I don't know. It's a great way to go.